Good afternoon, dear participants. Can you hear me?
Good afternoon.
Yeah, very tiresome sessions today and afternoon. I could have said no to this session, but I thought I have to at least give you an overview of what is there on the instruction material, and therefore I obliged. But it's really tough for me to engage this session. But let me see what can be done. Okay, so is it clear? Okay, so in your lessons, we are in your unit 1, you see neocriticism, structuralism, post-structuralism is done, right? So we are left with psychoanalytical theory, feminism, and new historicism. Yeah, do you have an instruction material in front of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so we are looking at all those 3 elements for now, and then followed by Simone de Beauvoir. I'll just sum up what is there in that particular chapter of Simone de Beauvoir and her main arguments. Hopefully we shall do whatever permits us as per our strengths today. Okay, so I will start with psychoanalysis. Okay.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
one request, ma'am. Pages, material pages of page number 16, 17, 18. Can you give screenshots, ma'am? We are not having that. We checked in. One of the friend also checked in OU. The papers are not available there, ma'am.
Okay, but how do I send that screenshots? I am not part of your group, no? Okay, I will do. I will send it to the. How shall I send? You just tell me the way.
If you give your number, I will contact you, ma'am.
My number is
any one of us.
My
You
number
can
is
show the book to the front of the camera, ma'am. We will take the screenshot.
We will teach, or else we will.
That's better. That sounds better. Which page you said?
Page 16, 17, 18.
Okay, 1 second.
And 7 also.
I don't know if the camera is clear. Can you see this?
We can't see whole thing.
Now?
Not clear. No, ma'am.
Madam, please share screenshot. Or else take a photo and send.
Ma'am, first you take the.
Ma'am, take a photo and share it, ma'am.
Then share. To whom shall I share? That's the whole problem now. I have to take a photo. I have to send it to my mail. I have to disconnect this class and again add to the share.
You can share.
Ma'am, you can log in with your mobile, ma'am. You can share your.
Let me not do those exercises now because I'm poor user of the gadgets. Okay, I'll do one thing. One of you can send me a message and I will send to that particular person and you can put it on the group. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay,
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, who asked this? That person can take the number and it is there on your timetable. You can take the number and then contact me. I will send. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am. So that's what I said, right? So we have 3 concepts which are left in this session, that is psychoanalytical theory, feminism, and new historicism. What I will do is I will for feminism I will reserve my discussion for Simone de Beauvoir's essay, okay, because there we'll be talking a lot of feminism and then elements related to that, and then we have to go into the chapter, okay. So feminism we will discuss there, but for now I will discuss psychoanalytical theory and new historicism. So with that we'll be through with unit 1, all the lessons, and unit 2, whatever I thought I'll be sharing 7 to 9 is done. Unit 3, 14 and 15 is done in the previous session, and 16 and 17 I'll be doing now. Okay, is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So when we what are your thoughts on psychoanalysis or psychoanalytical theory? You must have some experience or some readings in your days. What do you understand by that? Any idea?
Psycho means it is related to the mind, ma'am.
Very good.
So it is
Thoughts that take
analysis
place
of
in mind.
mind.
Okay, something related to the
Human
mind,
behavior.
human behavior.
Human behavior.
Okay, result of mind. Okay. Yeah. So psychoanalysis is a method of treating somebody's mental problems or disorders by making them aware of experiences in their early life and trying to trace the connection, okay, connection between these elements which are relevant to their present behavior or present feelings. Okay, so this is a type of new science which emerged in 20th century. And if you go into the details of it, Sigmund Freud, okay, a medical practitioner, okay, Sigmund Freud clinically examined certain patients. And what type of patients are these? They are hysterical patients. And by examining them, he could get some facts. Okay, he could identify certain truths, okay, about the human psyche. Human psyche, which definitely after that reading, by observing these hysterical patients, he brought a revolutionary change in the realm of knowledge, especially in the realm of human knowledge. Okay, so in his work called Interpretation of Dreams, did you get the work title? Interpretation of Dreams. Okay, in his work called Interpretation of Dreams, Sigmund Freud formulates a theory. And this theory is called, through this particular theory, he talks about a bicameral mind, two. Okay, camera, you see what is happening through this camera, right? He's talking about a bicameral mind, that is the unconscious mind and the conscious mind. Okay, he's trying to talk about two types of mind.
Ma'am, this
Okay.
page, ma'am.
Yeah. Yeah.
Page number, ma'am.
Sorry, we don't tell page numbers. Page numbers are meant only for your reading. You have to listen to the discussion. Okay. I'm not summing up from the instruction material. I am reading the original text and trying to discuss few points. Okay, so this is psychoanalysis in unit 1, psychoanalytical theory. Okay, so talks about the interpretation of dreams. Okay, where he talks about the two types of mind, the unconscious mind and the conscious mind. So the duality of human mind is based on two principles. Number one, the pleasure principle, and number two, the reality principle. Okay, so what happens through these two principles? Through the first principle, that is the pleasure principle, man tries to seek pleasure from certain activities. Okay, whereas the second one, that is a reality principle. Okay, through the reality principle, impels him to recognize reality. Okay, so these realities are mostly social conventions and acceptances, okay, which occupy a very important place, a very predominant place in human life. So through these two principles of pleasure principle and reality principle, through the two types of mind of a human mind, that is the conscious and the subconscious mind, there is a conflict between what? The pleasure principle, that is the personal desires, and the social sanctions that is related to the reality principle. Therefore, under this overwhelming pressure of the conventions and the restraints, we human beings
Okay.
are controlled. Okay, they suppress their desires and wishes. Please mute yourself. Please mute. Please mute yourself. Thank you. Okay, so under these pressures, human beings, okay, they try to suppress their desires and wishes, okay, because of the social constructs or the conventions. So this deliberate suppression of desires and this deliberate suppression of desires and impulses, okay, finds an ingress into the unconscious. And consequently, what happens is they fall ill or they become sick. So, in psychological terminology, such sickness or such illness is called neurosis. Okay, I mean, a mental illness that causes depression or an abnormal behavior. Okay, often definitely with some physical symptoms. Okay, which with no sign of any disease. Okay, so there are certain symptoms of neurosis, okay, more or less in all of us, okay, and some psychologists call them as because human beings, because of all these symptoms, they are called as neurotic animals. So the unfulfilled and frustrated desires and impulses, they are sublimated into higher and nobler modes. So if there are higher and nobler modes, society will accept them. Okay, and therefore it has wide acceptance and it has wide credibility. So what does Sigmund Freud says is, according to Sigmund Freud, the suppression of libido, okay, the suppression of these desires occupies a very key position in human life. Okay, so this suppression of human desires sublimates into some praiseworthy or socially acceptable achievements. For example, if you say temple, okay, the construction of temples, the construction of churches, the construction of institutions, okay, hospitals, okay, academies, etc. All these are the manifestations of such sublimated impulses. Okay, so in order to derive pleasure from all these unfulfilled or frustrated desires, we sublimate them, and consequently we are prompted to perform socially accepted deeds. Okay, see, most of the time we see how people consecrate their life for church, or people consecrate their life for temples, okay, or masjids. Okay, so because those are the acceptable norms in the society. Okay, but if you say you want to end up living in a live-in relationship, okay, in a colony where there are families or residential areas, society will not accept you. Why? Because that is not a socially accepted construction. Okay, so as per this theory, okay, this suppression of certain desires occupy a very key position in human life, and therefore when those sublimated desires are diverted towards certain praiseworthy socially accepted norms or achievements, these are called as nothing but the, what shall I say, the manifestation of the sublimated impulses. And therefore we have all these charitable deeds, okay, all these performances of nobler humanitarian aspects. Okay, so this is how Sigmund Freud tries to talk about in his through this concept of psychoanalysis. So dreams play a great importance in Freudian psychology. Okay, and according to Sigmund Freud, you know very important concept of Oedipus complex. Okay, where there is an important role of neurosis. Okay, so psychosis is like a severe mental illness that affects the whole personality, and of course it is a manifestation of unconsciousness. And the worst part of psychosis, or the worst manifestation of psychosis, is schizophrenia. Okay, where a person is unable to link his or her personal thoughts to real life. So this withdraws them from increasingly social relationships into a life of imagination, into a life of fantasy. There we see very important critic, Terry Eagleton, a cultural critic, where he remarks about the unconscious, is called as id, the conscious is called as ego, that is I. So Sigmund Freud has influenced, both literary critics, and the writers. And to name few, we have James Joyce, we have Virginia Woolf, we have D.H. Lawrence, and many others. They believed in psychoanalysis, and therefore a new school of criticism emerged. And this new school of criticism is called psychological criticism. That is mainly concerned with the author and the content of his work. So it excludes the formal construction of the work, and the formal construction of the work and the reader from its consideration. So Sigmund Freud tries to compare the art to neurosis. The art to neurosis, and the artist powerfully swayed by instincts and impulses, which transport him to a world of fantasies. And the artist is endowed with such a knowledge of presenting his fantasies, and reveries especially, and he convincingly provides, of course, that convincingly tries to provide pleasure. So this Sigmund Freud calls it as fore-pleasure to his readers. So the poet or artist's life and his repression for a brief moment takes, it's like a forbidden pleasure in his own unconscious pleasure. So we see a lot of such things in his very monumental work called The Interpretation of Dreams. Where we see in this monumental work, we see Sigmund Freud exclusively comments on the nature of dreams and meticulously links them with the literary work, in the interpretation of dreams. So psychoanalysis has been excessively considerable. It has its influence on literary criticism. And the first person who was influenced by this is Lacan. It's Jacques Lacan. He is a student of medicine in Paris, and he joined Freudian psychoanalytical movement in 1936. And he stands as a very significant critic, in terms of disseminating the structuralist and post-structuralist ideas about language, literature, and the nature of human subject. So his focus is on the factor of, so to make it very easy and simple, he was insisting of the letter in the unconscious. He was insisting on the letter in the unconscious. So Lacan points out that the factor of speech is important in literary text. So he is trying to look at language and symbolization. That tries to unfold the complex layers of unconsciousness. So the written word is of great importance as per the psychoanalyst theory. That is the first point he talks about. And the second one, he gives he insists the letter in the unconscious, and he gives the meaning of that letter. Okay, Jacques Lacan, he psychoanalytic experience of the unconscious is a whole structure of the language. So he says letter is of great importance because it helps in bringing to light the states of the unconscious. So he defines letter as a material support. As a material support which brings or which concretely can be seen, that is borrowed from a language. Okay, so he assumes that language should not be confused with the diverse psychic and semantic functions. Okay, psychic and somatic functions which are seen in an individual speaker. Okay, so in that sense, he says tradition is very important, and then he moves on how the letter is very significant in the unconscious. Okay, where he calls the dream as rebus. Okay, in which you see it's like a puzzle in which picture represent words. Okay, so dream images have importance, and these dream images which have importance stand as signifiers. Okay, so it is a structure of language which enables us to read and understand dreams. So this is his insistence on the unconscious. Okay, then you see how this particular letter, okay, being the letter and the other is another interpretation which Lacan tries to bring in this psychoanalytical theory. Okay, where he talks about there is a degree of otherness in each of us. Okay, but it is difficult to mediate between me and the double of myself. Okay, so the other represent our desires, okay, of which remain as unfulfilled, and therefore the unconsciousness is a discourse of the other. So this is another understanding of psychoanalytic theory. So what do we do? The goal is how to attain this reintegration and how to bring a reconciliation between the two divided halves. And what are these two divided halves? Is a self. Okay, so we see a lot of revolutionary influence on the human sciences. This particular theory had a very significant influence on human sciences, especially where man, politics, metaphysics, literature, arts, okay, or what advertising, propaganda, all these, including economy, they all were affected through this particular theoretical approach. Okay, then we have the second critic in this psychoanalytic theory, Harold Bloom. Please write in your notebook if you have a pen and paper in front of you. Okay, I started with Sigmund Freud as an important medical doctor who brought this theory, continued with Jacques Lacan, and then I am discussing Harold Bloom now. Are you following?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, the next critic is Harold Bloom, and of course he is one of the professors at the Department of Humanities at Yale University, and one of the important idiosyncratic critics who is significant in terms of its writing. So his work, A Map of Misreading. Please make a note. A Map of Misreading. Okay, is an important contribution in this particular critical theory.
Ma'am, a map of
Misreading. Misreading. A map of misreading. Okay, where he talks about the poetic origins and the final phases. Okay, there are few chapterization where each chapter focuses on a significant element, where a chapter, especially the first chapter, talks about the poetic origins and the final phases. Okay, as a summatory of the critical thought. Then how he brings in great poets like Yeats, Lawrence, okay, Ezra Pound, all those who are analyzed through that map of misreading. Okay, where he says that even Coleridge and T.S. Eliot could not attain the height of strength, okay, without this triumphant solipsism. Okay, where you see how Bloom observes poetic strength in the sense that rises from a particular kind of catastrophe, okay, a particular kind of catastrophe that an ordinary consciousness must regard the terrible incarnation of the poet, like Hardy and Stevens. Okay, so all their poetic strength, okay, is what he calls is where does this poetic, what is the source of, to put it in simple way, what is the source of their poetic strength? So it comes from a strong feeling of superiority. Okay, strong feeling of superiority towards the deceased poets, and even more towards the triumphant poets. Therefore a map of misreading. Okay, so again you see how the mind works. Okay, so poets are inclined to idealize their activity. So poets, both weak and strong to that extent, agree in denying any share in the anxiety of influence. Okay, see, if you have an interview, or if you have test, or if you have examination, how anxious you are. Okay, so contemporary poets assert that they express truth in their poems, but in fact they only tell lies. Okay, they only tell lies about their relations to one another. Okay, and especially in relationship to their precursor, a poet who came before. So this is one of the main functions of the criticism, according to Harold Bloom. Okay, that is to make a good poet's work even more difficult for him to perform. Okay, since only the overcoming of genuine difficulties can result in poems conscious understanding of a human being in that. So all, including the critic or poets, okay, it is like the that it's like a deadly encouragement that never ends. Okay, that ceases to remind them of how heavy their inheritance is. Okay, so even if you have you read any of the Shelley's poetry in your first year, P.B. Shelley? Did you read P.B. Shelley? Hello, good evening. Are you listening?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what poems of P.B. Shelley have you read? Did you read Ode to West Wind? Ode on a Grecian Urn? No? Anyone have read that?
Nightingale.
Ode to Nightingale. Okay, what is there in that? Ode to Nightingale.
About some bird.
About some bird. Only summary. Okay.
About nature, ma'am.
About nature. Anyway, now let me not waste my time because I have very less time. Okay. So to Bloom, okay, we are discussing Harold Bloom as a psychoanalytic critic. Okay, in terms of his main functions of criticism as per this particular theory. Okay, so to Bloom, Shelley is the incarnation of the poetic strength. Okay, and he looks at how these poets, okay, did not have the strength. I mean, he compares Shelley to Coleridge or Blake and other who were influenced by him. Okay, and he says they did not have that strength of poetic vision that Shelley had. Okay, so he's trying to do a comparative study. Okay, where he talks about the intellectual penetration. Okay, that Shelley had as his poetic strength. Okay, and you know P.B. Shelley's important quote, where poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. Okay, where lots of things can be communicated through poetry. So he's like he has a sense of power, of hope, where he also compares them to Wordsworth's Immortality Ode or other odes. Okay, so to Bloom, every strong poet in Western tradition, okay, in Western tradition is like the Jonah of the biblical tradition. So he's like poet recreate the visions of ocean. Okay, so he talks about how immortal by virtue the knowledge of human nature is. Okay, so the love for one's own poetry implies that self-love. Okay, and poems are always influenced by other poems. And a poem, you see, definite a poet is also influenced by other poet. So poets never die. Poetic voices pass away from one poet to the other. So it's like a poem is written to escape from dying. Okay, so this is how we see how Harold Bloom tries to justify the poetic, the sense of poetry through this psychoanalytic theory. Okay, and all these are examples of how he analyzes literature through this particular theory. Okay, then you have the last important critic in this particular theory is Hartman. Okay, H-A-R-T, not H-E-A-R-T. Geoffrey Hartman, okay, a professor of English at comparative literature again at Yale University. And he is an important exponent of post-structuralist theory with psychoanalytical approach, where he is closely associated with Harold Bloom and his lecture, especially through the interpretation of dreams. Okay, where a particular type of ideology is emerged. So Geoffrey Hartman suggests that Freud's analysis of dreams by means of free association directs him to certain conclusions. And what are these conclusions? Conclusion is that human cognition, okay, human cognition is a human knowledge system, okay, where a process of obtaining knowledge is cognition, okay, through experience especially. Human cognition is essentially polysemous, where Hartman tries to emphasize two features. One, psychoanalytic interpretation. Two, so he talks about how he distinguishes psychoanalytic interpretation from the influential modes, especially one concerning the transactive reaction of the text. That is, the dream text has no fixity, like scriptures has certain fixed understanding, theological understanding, right? So it has no fixity. Number two, the psychoanalytic interpretation is always it's foretelling rather than evangelic. Okay, so it's like it's like how New Testament brings good news and interprets the Old Testament. It's like in the light of faith. Okay, so this is like an evangelic interpretation. So So Sigmund Freud's interpretation of dreams is something like that reveals the vision in a scientific pattern. Okay, so Hartmann he tries to devote his essay, okay, in identifying one particular interpretation of Wordsworth's poem. So he takes one particular poem called "A Slumber Did My Spirit Seal." He evokes three important themes in that. Number one, incompleteness. Number two, mourning. Number three, memory. With the help of this particular poem, he tries to bring how, or in fact, he suggests certain dream visions. Okay, where an analysis is taken place, and what type of analysis? A linguistic analysis. Okay, not with the sounds, but of course with the speech acts which are taking place in that particular poet. So to sum up, this is one important theoretical approach which emerged with the help of a clinical examination of a medical practitioner called Sigmund Freud, to the theoretical aspect of psychoanalytical theory, okay, where we have important personalities, critical personalities, starting from Jacques Lacan and his contribution, and you have Harold Bloom and his contribution, and the last one is you have Geoffrey Hartmann and his contribution to this particular theory. Okay.